Good evening, everybody. It is 2023. Our illustrious President Joe Biden still reigns proudly from his office, and Congress is finally considering the long-awaited TikTok ban. Or is it? Looking here at what is proposed, we are seeing from the 118th Congress, the Restrict Act here, which in theory is meant to restrict TikTok. But when we look at the wording here, I'm a little bit skeptical as to the real intention behind this. All right, so let's read through this real quick. This bill requires federal actions to identify and mitigate foreign threats to information and communications technology, products, and services. It also establishes civil and criminal penalties for violations under the bill, specifically the Department of Commerce. Now, there's an important thing right there that we'll get back to. Must identify, deter, disrupt, prevent, prohibit, investigate, and mitigate transactions involving ICT products and services in which any foreign adversary, such as China, has any interest and that pose an undue or unacceptable risk to U.S. national security or the safety of U.S. persons. Additionally, Commerce must identify and refer to the President any covered holding, such as a stock or security, that poses an undue or unacceptable risk to U.S. national security or the security and safety of U.S. persons. If the President determines that the holding poses such a risk, the President may compel divestment of or otherwise mitigate the risk associated with the holding. So, what seems to be the issue with that? That seems fairly straightforward and laid out. Well, there's a couple things that seem a little bit off with that. For one, the biggest concern that I have here is this Department of Commerce that I said we would get back to. Once again, as our government so loves to do, we are going to be giving this massive amount of power that is in use to care for our nation and identify and mitigate these threats. We are giving it to a department that is not elected. They are not elected officials. They are not overseen by the people. They are appointed by Congress and therefore have no real accountability to the people. This is the exact same thing that we saw with things such as the Patriot Act, where powers were given to the NSA.
This is a load of barnacles.
I heard that!
In fact, looking back at history, this was one of even the biggest complaints that was given against Great Britain, was the number of offices that the king elected and gave power to, with no accountability from Parliament. But now let's go into what exactly powers they're getting that are concerning. Well, for one, a big one here is the fact that they get to identify. That puts the responsibility of identifying these threats solely in their hands. Not only do we have an unelected official organization doing this, but it is their responsibility to not only identify but also to enforce these laws, giving practically no security in place for the rest of the American citizens. This bill here is, we need to point this out, this bill is not limited to TikTok. This is not limited to China. This is information and communications technology, product, and services. That's a very wide range of applications there. That goes to any international website, technology, company development, anything that an individual in the U.S. is working with outside of the U.S., this Department of Commerce now has the authority to control. And not only that, but to say that it is designed as a threat to TikTok is rather ridiculous, given it doesn't specifically even mention TikTok. This can be in relation to absolutely anything. Sure, it gives them the authority to, but are they actually going to? And if they actually do, well, that's a massive process in of itself. First of all, Commerce is going to have to designate them as a significant threat to U.S. national security. Then that must be passed on to the president, who then decides what to do. Not only are we giving the authority to the federal government to control and limit international communication technology, we're not even being guaranteed what this bill is proposed for. So yes, this bill could be passed, and we could see a TikTok ban. We could see China being limited in what they're allowed to do with their communication technology and the propaganda that they've spread through the nation. But that's not guaranteed. The only thing guaranteed is that we give the federal government the ability to do it in any situation that they deem necessary, in any situation that the Department of Commerce identifies as a threat to national security. So I have to ask here, is this bill really the bill that needs to be passed? Or do we need to look into this a bit further? Because I've started seeing people comparing this to the Patriot Act. And yes, the Patriot Act sounded great when you considered what the idea at the time was, what the issue was, what it was proposed for. But it wasn't specifically proposed for that. It simply gave the government the ability to do what that proposal was, and then the freedom to do it for whatever else they deemed necessary. And that is what I believe we're seeing here. What this is just another outreach of the federal government's power. I've got some serious concerns if this bill is to go through. Are we just giving away another one of our rights to the federal government? This bill here is meant to protect against China, supposedly. But this bill seems to give a lot of the same authority to the federal government as the Chinese government has there in controlling their web traffic. If we look over in China, we see the communist government there has come to a point in limiting the websites and traffic that the people are allowed to use to the point where they have to find technology such as the Tor web browser in order to get access to anything else, because all else is illegal, because China has deemed everything else a threat to their government. And in many ways, I believe this is what we're seeing in this bill here. Federal government taking the exact same authority. Hey guys, happy to have y'all here. Thank y'all so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see y'all in the next one.